I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. I've spent most of my life outdoors backpacking, hiking, solo trips, climbing. I've always felt at ease and comfortable in the woods. I've lived all over the world adventuring in the mountains. Currently, I reside in Utah. In September, the boyfriend, dog, and I took a 3-day weekend to go to the Wind River Range outside of Pinedale, Wyoming. We arrived late at night and spent the night in the back of the truck at the trailhead. The next morning, we hiked 10 miles to camp at Lost Lake. Lost Lake is a very small glacier lake with large rock cliffs and an incredible view of huge craggy mountains. We set up camp next to the water. It was an amazing day. When night fell though, things got strange. I had an uneasy feeling in my chest. I didn't say anything to the boyfriend. The dog kept pacing in circles, and we both laughed about it, blaming it on our 13 years of age. We watched our small fire burn out and retired around 9 p.m. I fell asleep immediately. I woke up to the dog crying outside the tent. The boyfriend was sitting up in his sleeping bag. I asked if he was okay. He said he felt strange. I let the dog in the tent, and yeah, I make her sleep outside. I know, bad dog owner, called the Aspa. The dog was acting strange. She was shaking like she was scared. I put her between us to warm her up and calm her down. She stared into my eyes with the whites of her eyes showing. She's a cattle dog, not afraid of anything. I started to feel anxious. The boyfriend said he was cold and had a terrible headache. I gave him some Tylenol out of the first aid kit and took a look at the time. It was 2 a.m. He showed signs of altitude sickness and hypothermia. We live at 8,000 feet. We were camping at 10,500 and the temps were in the upper 20s. It didn't make any sense to me. We're used to this climate. I felt fine. The dog looked alarmed. She stopped breathing like she does when she sees something. Her ears perked up and she stared out of the door of the tent. 20 minutes later, the boyfriend said he was burning up. He wanted out of his sleeping bag. I made him stay in his bag, thinking it was hypothermia. I told him that he would be okay. I got out of the tent to make him a hot drink, and the dog went wild. She ran out of the tent and stood beside me, growling in every direction. I shined my spot headlamp everywhere while nothing in sight. I told her it was okay, but she wouldn't listen. The boyfriend started saying we needed to leave. He got out of the tent and started to frantically pack up our camp. I pleaded with him to calm down. I've never seen him not mellow. He's the voice of reason in our relationship. I'm usually the one to overreact. We are both EMS and SIR trained. This was bizarre behavior. He kept saying, "We need to get out of here." 2:45 a.m., we started our 10-mile trek back to the trailhead where our truck was parked. I'm normally in the front when we hike, but this night I was a shepherd and stayed in the back, keeping my boyfriend in the front and the dog between us. We walked silently for an hour. I've never been afraid of the woods. I've had things happen, and I've been afraid of situations, but never of the woods. That night, I was terrified of the woods, but I stayed calm. 3 miles into the way back, a stick popped. The dog stopped in front of me. The boyfriend started shining his headlamp to our left. A dark mass moved 30 feet from us. I put my light on it, but couldn't see the body. The eyes looked at us and stopped. I grabbed the bear spray. I was convinced it was a bear. We yelled at it, "Get! Go on, bear!" But it stood there. My light was on its body, but all I could make out was its size. It was 6 to 7 feet tall. It moved towards us after what felt like an eternity of staring at glowing eyes. It was upright with a long tail. Once again, it stopped. This time, 20 feet from us. I still couldn't make out what it was. The eyes closed, It looked like it crouched, and then it was gone. The dog stood behind us, shaking and silent. We began to walk quickly, keeping a light and eye behind and ahead of us. We didn't talk. At dawn, a bow hunter was running towards us up the trail. I said hello, and he stopped and looked into my eyes. He nodded and said, "It will be okay." I was exhausted, terrified, and still shaken by what had happened a couple of hours before. His reaction scared me even more. We must have looked to be in bad shape. We got back to the truck around 7:30 a.m. The boyfriend still not feeling well, and the dog looking like she was about to die. I drove us 4 hours home. It took 2 days for the dog and the boyfriend to feel well again. I don't know what happened to us in the woods that night. I don't feel like what we saw was an animal. It felt like something demonic took hold of my family that night. We talked about that night for the first time a couple of nights ago. The boyfriend said he had felt like something had taken over him, like he didn't have any control over his thoughts or emotions. He said a voice told him to leave our campsite. He said he would have left with or without me. Does anyone know what this could have been? I appreciate any feedback. This story I heard from my grandmother and a few other elders from the Zapotec community I grew up in. This story takes place a few decades back, and some of the elders that saw this have long been deceased. Some are still alive, but very few. Long ago, in the village I was born in, which is a small Zapotec community in the village of Oaxaca, Mexico, there was a couple that lived on the edge of the village. This couple was middle-aged with no kids. Life those days was simple in the village. No electricity, TVs, radios, or any other form of communication besides verbally talking to one another. People knew each other well. One day, a rumor was spreading around the village about this particular couple that I'm talking about. The villagers would say that the wife in the marriage was a witch that would go out at night in the form of a black dog to steal babies. People were afraid of her, and her husband heard these rumors but never paid any attention to it. He didn't believe them since he never saw his wife leave the house at night. Note though, in Mexico, there is a belief among the indigenous communities that varies from place to place. There are witches that come out at night to take babies away from the parents for the night. It is believed that the witches take the babies and play with them as if the babies were balls. Many babies have died in my village. They were fine at night when they went to sleep, but in the morning they would have unexplained bruises and broken bones, etc. Anyways, the witches then take the babies to their leader, who is said to eat kissed from the baby. I'm not sure what they mean by eating kissed, but I must assume it is nothing good. Anyway, back to the story. Close friends of the husband of the marriage would warn him about his wife being a witch. They would tell him that they have seen her doing witchcraft and stuff, but he never believed them. Until one night, he woke up in the middle of the night and saw that in his wife's place there was nothing. He did not go back to sleep, and then, as the sun was starting to rise, he heard his wife coming back and laying next to him. He didn't bother his wife with questions, but he did start to believe the rumors. The next night, he went to bed early and pretended to be asleep. The time that his wife left to steal babies had come, and he was still awake, trying to figure out what was really happening. His wife then called him to make sure he was asleep. He didn't answer and pretended to be asleep. As I said before, at the time, people did not have electricity, so they lighted the house with candles, torches, or oil lamps. His wife called him a second and third time to make sure he was sleeping, and still no answer from her husband. She then started to do her ritual, and at this time, his husband had turned to face her direction, still pretending to be asleep. He then saw that his wife would pull out her skin from her scalp to her feet, revealing a giant black dog. The dog then picked up the human skin that was laying on the ground and hid it inside a big clay pot and covered it with its lid. The husband could not believe what he was seeing. He waited a long time to make sure his wife was gone before he got up and went towards the pot that the skin was hidden in. He uncovered the pot, and there it was, the skin of his wife. He then went and grabbed some salt and started to cover the whole inside of the skin with salt. He poured and poured salt until the whole skin was covered in it, left and back inside the pot, and then went back to bed, still unable to sleep. The sun was starting to come out of the horizon when he heard someone come into his house. He then pretended to be asleep and heard the thing going towards the pot. It was his wife that had come back and was ready to put on a human skin. He saw everything from the corner of his eye, how his wife would put the skin on and then feel discomfort before taking it off again. This went on and on for a while until the sun was already visible. His wife, then worried that her husband would wake up and see her like that, she went to bed next to him and covered herself from head to toe with a blanket. It was already midday, and his wife did not wake up. He already knew the reason, but pretended not to know. He went to wake up his wife, and he did not hear a response. He would shake his wife, and still no response. Then he tried to uncover the blanket off of her, and she did not let him. He pulled the blanket really hard, and that is when he saw the black dog that was his wife. She then died. The story as told does not actually give an explanation as to how the wife died, leading me to believe that the villagers actually killed it. Anyways, after that, the husband then left the village. At that time, people would talk about a place that, translated into Spanish, would be something like Tierra Baya, meaning land below, or low land. The husband left to this mysterious place and was never seen again by anyone of the villagers. Today, people do not know where that place is, but it is said to be in the distance of a month traveling by foot, but it is unknown if it's in the south, north, east, or west. This mysterious place was said to be a place of abundance and opportunity. Some of the elders still alive today that witnessed this swear that this story happened for real.